Welcome back to the Go Have Good Sex podcast featuring me, the Christian Sexpert. I'm so glad that you're back. Guys, I'm super excited for today's episode because I'm going to admit that I am kind of terrible about teaching people how to flirt with their spouses because my primary language is sarcasm. English was a second language for me. And my version of flirting is just kind of being mean. And that doesn't work in every marriage. If that is your marriage and that works for your marriage, hi, bestie, how are you? But turns out not everybody speaks fluent sarcasm like we do in my house. And that's why I brought Brittany, the Christian sexologist, on today's episode, because she's going to teach all of us how to flirt nicely with our spouses. And maybe Mr. Sexpert will get a surprise after tonight's episode, and I'll flirt nicely with him. And then he'll think that I've been body snatched, and it will be a whole thing. Brittany Broaddus-Smith is an international Christian sexologist, creator of the daring discussion Sex Talk that doesn't have to lead to the bedroom conversation cards, and the founder of the Intimacy Firm. The Intimacy Firm's work bridges the gap between the science and scripture of human sexuality. Brittany is an accomplished licensed social worker, sexuality educator, trainer, and speaker. Brittany earned a bachelor's degree in psychology and master's degrees in both social work and clinical human sexuality. Working in the intersection of sexuality and faith, Brittany travels internationally, facilitating daring discussions around those typically taboo subjects. The Intimacy Firm's mission is to empower individuals to discover, embrace, and navigate their sexual selves without compromising their values. I am so excited that you're joining me on the podcast. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited as well.
And I am super excited that I get to feature another Christian working in the space of healthy sexuality for Christians because there are not nearly enough of us out there. So, yay. All right. So we're going to dive right in. Why is flirting important for marriage? I mean, you're already married. You already got them. They're stuck with you. Why is it important?
Because much like any other type of communication, it is crucial to helping you get seen, if that makes sense. Like, we want like intimacy, as we like to say, the Intimacy Firm is being seen, heard, valued, and understood. And in order to facilitate that, you have to communicate. So what flirting does, or erotic communication, what that does is to communicate to your partner what you like, what you're interested in, what you're looking forward to in the moment. And it's a fun, lighthearted way, especially for Christians, to make those bids for sexual connection. It is affirming. Well, if done right, it can be affirming. It could be, as I said, it could kind of break the ice a little bit, and it just keeps that light and airy fun in marriages. A lot of folks talk all the time about trying to get that spark back in your marriage. For me, flirting and erotic communication of any kind, even if it doesn't like automatically turn into a sex act in the next couple of minutes, it's almost like that thing that keeps the pilot light on. So it's not a matter of having to get the spark back, but it's just, picking and choosing or based on the seasons when it's turned up or down.
You used a phrase a couple of times, erotic communication. Can you break down what that is, how that's different from flirting? Is it the same thing, just another way of saying it? What is it?
To me, it's the same thing because it's just essentially like the science of, or the process of either physically or verbally or, demonstratively in whatever way you communicate, making your thoughts, wishes, desires, or interests known to your partner. And it's the way in which we communicate those sexual things. It's not just, it doesn't always have to be like the raspy voice or like, the low eyes in the dark room. It could just, by you saying, I really love how strong your hands are when you give me a massage. Like it makes me feel, X, Y, and Z. I'm so looking forward to the next time you A, B, and C. Or if they're across the room and you wink at them and you lick your lips and you do a whatever motion that y'all have understood, that's like a come here motion, that's still communicating non-verbally that you're interested in making some sort of intimate or erotic connection. So for me, flirting would likely be, if I had to categorize, it'll probably be more in the low end, like in the more like starter end of erotic communication. And then there's levels to it, but it's still under the same umbrella to me.
So I know a lot of my clients especially, probably got super uncomfortable when you were like, oh, the sexy, bedroom eyes and things like
Mm-hmm.
that, because we know that purity culture bred a lot of shame that couples often carry into their marriages, and they struggle with that communication about sex, and they struggle with anything that is kind of supposed to leave them feeling sexy.
Yeah.
And that often comes out in surrounding their communication about sex,
Mm-hmm.
expressing interest in sex
Mm-hmm.
and things like that. And so even just flirting
Mm-hmm.
or figuring out like what does she mean by bedroom eyes leaves them
Mm-hmm.
feeling so awkward. And so if someone wants to start adding more flirting into their marriage, when they have that trauma and that awkwardness, where should they start?
That's definitely, if it's the trauma awkwardness, we definitely have to start internally. Like you have to begin to get to a place where you can even say it yourself out loud. You can even have the thought, right? Because a lot of us, especially as believers or Christians, as you said, who've had those negative experiences, we can't even think it, let alone, bring it out our mouths. Or if it's an automatic thought, then it's a lot of shame and heaviness that comes after it. So being able to sit with, when, for a woman, like if your husband walks in the room looking good, smelling good, and you like, oh my God, I don't even want to go to this party no more. We might as well just take that suit off. And you have that automatic thought. It's like, oh my God, I'm a woman of God. Why would I think that? So being able to sit in that I have this desire, that I want my husband in this way, that I think about this man as more than just the one who protects and provides, and he's more than just those kids' daddy. He's my husband, and he's my access to orgasmic erotic experiences. And I like that about him. I'm attracted to him. When I look at him and I smell him, things start to get to moving in my insides. Really just first sitting with that, right? And then from there, working on getting it out of your mind and out of your mouth, or from your mind out of your mouth. So that could start with saying it in the mirror. That could start with sending it via text message, because I've in clients that I've worked with, text messages for whatever reason were so much easier than standing in front of his face and saying it. And so just like working through the levels, but before we can get to those places, you have to be able to sit with the fact that you had these thoughts, you have these desires, and there's nothing wrong with it. You're allowed to have these desires. God is not mad at you because you had this desire. You're not less saved because you have this desire. You are not less pure or less holy. You did not get lower down the list in the Lamb's Book of Life. It's all good. It really truly is embracing of biblical freedom when you're able to rest in the freedom of those thoughts. So that's where I would start, is the internal work.
For sure. So I want to touch on one of the things that you said, where you said, get it out of your mind. And then you followed that with, and out of your mouth. But
Mm-hmm.
my first thought was, oh, she's going to say into your body.
Mm-hmm.
Because one of the things that I talk a lot about to my clients is, as women, we are socially conditioned to disconnect from our bodies from the
Mm-hmm.
time that we are so young, right? Think about
Mm-hmm.
the first time that you had your first period, you had terrible cramps, and your
Mm-hmm.
parents told you, well, Paul and Elsa, conceal, don't feel, you still have to go to school, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
you were taught and conditioned to ignore the physical things that were happening in your body.
Mhm.
And when it comes to flirting and erotic communication and all of those things, so many women are conditioned to live so exclusively in their heads
Yep.
that they don't know how, and this is like such a much bigger topic because I talk about this in direct relation to women who struggle to orgasm,
Mhm.
because my thing is, you are so disconnected from your body, you can't recognize whether you're experiencing pain or pleasure
Right.
because you're so
Right.
disconnected. And
Right.
so I think some women have said are thinking, well, my husband walks into a room in a suit and I don't have any tingles. There's no tingles.
Right.
There's nothing.
Right.
Because you all are so up in your heads all the time. You are not existing in your bodies. You can't recognize the fact that there are tingles to be felt, right?
Right.
And
Right.
so that, I think, is part. So when you're saying that you have to sit with the feelings first, the internal work.
Mhm.
I think that's a big part of it, is
Yeah.
learning to reconnect to your body, learning to live
Right.
within your body and not just disconnect all the
Right.
time.
Right. And I like to think for me, at least in my experience personally, and in experiences of folks that I've worked with, the body does what it does, right? There, we don't really have, outside of like actual medical conditions and things like that, we don't really have the strength to make our bodies do other things. What we do, because of the shame, because of the trauma, as you said, because we're so in our heads, is we then begin to rationalize or name or define body functions as other things. So we're not approaching it or applying it correctly. And so I think that being aroused by your partner is a natural physiological thing if it's the something that is you are attracted to. Now, unfortunately, some of us have just found ourselves in marriage where attraction wasn't a thing that we ever were given permission to have or consider. And then I found myself working with women who, when I asked them, like, this is like cart before the horse type of question, but when I'm like, have you ever had an orgasm? And they're like, well, what is that? And then we pull it back and I'm like, what happens when this happened? What happens when that happens? Have you ever like, when washing up accidentally, like, wiped across your clitoris, like just like the front facing ball of your clitoris, and like what, like those jolts, like have you ever had that sensation? And they're like, okay, yes, I had that. And I'm like, okay, has there been any point in any engagement in anything that with your partner, with your husband, where you felt that similar feeling? And they're like, and they really have to pull back the layers because, as you said, we're so in our heads. And I think that we really should give the body and really God more credit for how resilient he designed the body, and it's us who's going in, naming it and calling it other the functions and the sensations, other things, even down with to sensuality, right? Like when we reduce sexuality and intimacy and eroticism and all those things to just penis and vagina penetration, we really are leaving so much joy and pleasure on the table because he allowed us to take in so much of these experiences through all of the senses that he gave us. And I think that we operate at only like 10% of our body's capacity because of trauma, because of shame, because of lack of knowledge, because of misinformation, because of disinformation, because of the lack of education, because of all of those things. And once given the information, I feel like, in my experience, as I said, more women have been able to go back, like, okay, yeah, I do feel that. I did have that. And I thought that was just this, or I thought that was that, or I was never able to make it happen, again, because they're so used to this cookie cutter supposed to be, that they feel it and then they move on to something else because whatever caused it doesn't fit the flow of what was deemed appropriate or normal.
Yes, because we have such a lack of actual factual, scientific based education
Correct.
around sex in the evangelical Christian church that most women are at best getting their sex education from Hollywood. Like
Hmm.
at best. And people think that, like, well, I don't know what it means to feel sexy. And they're
Yep.
thinking of like Jessica Rabbit or
Yes.
something, you know,
Yeah.
like
Or
the
porn. Jessica Rabbit on
yes,
the low end and porn on the high end, and they don't see
right,
themselves anywhere. They can't even define the word sexy.
right.
And then
And
I find that any definition of sexy that they come up with, they don't fall in that definition.
right, right. I have done videos several times on wearing like granny jammies or moo like our
Mm-hmm.
grandmothers wore. And those videos always blow up because people are like, oh my gosh, like, yeah, grandma had 17 kids, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, this is the point, y'all. Okay. Sexy isn't Jessica Rabbit, isn't sexy. The sexiness is the person that your husband is married to. It's
Mm-hmm.
you. That there
Mm-hmm.
is a reason your husband finds you extremely attractive wearing your granny jammies. There's a
Mm-hmm.
reason because sexy is not as the world defines it. And
Yep.
you have to pay attention to those moments where your husband is expressing intense desire and get into your body and think about, what am I feeling? What am I doing? What am I experiencing in this moment? And not just dismiss it as, I'm not being sexy right now. I don't, why is he being so weird?
Right.
Why is he being
Right.
weird?
Right. Right. And I think that even if your type of sexy does come with a little bit of Jessica Rabbit, that's okay too. But what
More power
makes
to
it
you.
sexy, exactly what makes it
It's
sexy
not
though,
me.
it what makes it sexy is the confidence that this is what you lean to, because you also feel good in what's happening, in what you're wearing. And it's not just something. Now, sometimes you put it on a little show, every now and again, and it's not really.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like it today. It's his birthday. You want to make him feel good. It's fine. Sometimes you put that on, but you are empowered when you wear this, particular type of lingerie. When you put those shoes, there's something about when you have heels on versus when you don't that just brings out something more in you, and it's more the confidence and the authenticity that makes it sexy. Because I have had women say they're too silly to be sexy. Me personally, for a very long time, I felt like I was too silly to be sexy, but also that I wasn't soft enough because I am more, not necessarily masculine, but I am more like, I hung with a lot of boys growing up. So I'm more, I'm not, feminine by the definition that it's supposed to, be. At a time, I
Well,
believe this.
and we need to look at the trends that are currently happening on social media and Instagram. And what is trending right now is the trad wife aesthetic.
Yeah.
The little house on the prairie dresses with,
Yeah.
sourdough and all of that stuff.
Hate it.
And do y'all not realize that is a kink? I'm going to say it again. That trad wife lifestyle that so many influencers are promoting as the highest biblical womanhood thing that you can aspire to is a kink.
Tell the truth and shame the devil.
And like, if that's your kink, go for it, babe. Lean hard into that.
Do your thing.
100%.
Yep.
Love that for you. Stop trying to make your kink into biblical truth for all people, because
Yep.
that's not it. The Bible never says prairie dresses and sourdough are the ultimate in biblical femininity.
Right.
If that's your kink,
Right.
I honestly, like, I am pro kink. I am one of the only Christian sex educators I know that openly discusses kink and the positive
Mhm.
effects that kink can have in a marriage. It's a kink, though. And so just because you don't fall into a definition of what popular media is describing as biblical femininity and sensuality and sexuality does not mean you are less sexy.
Yep. Yep. And it was difficult, even like as someone newly married who wasn't like extremely domesticated, because I was very much like, if I can afford it, why are we doing this? Bring somebody in to do the why am
Girl,
I
preach it.
my grandma
Preach
my okay. My
preach
grandmother,
it.
we moved further away. And so my grandmother, her way of getting to see us was coming out every 2 weeks, getting up at crack 30 in the morning, washing everything that we own, cleaning up, cooking, doing all the things. We gave her a couple dollars just because, she was on a fixed income and she didn't really want the money, but it was like, I gave it to her anyway.
Yes.
And like, that's what she did with for a living before she retired. And this it brought her joy. And I'm like, and I get to sleep in and wake up to pancakes and my house is clean. Why not? But there was a lot of, not necessarily shame, but there was a lot of uncertainty around my role as a wife because I wasn't. I mean, I would cook, but I wasn't big cleaning and doing all that. And so, but then when it came to sex, I would almost feel like I would jump to the other end. It was like I have two buttons. Hey, how you doing? And all kinds of things not safe for work kind of language. And my ex-husband was like, can we tone that down a little bit? And I thought coming in as the wife, willing to do whatever, because I was also controlled, because so many Christian wives are controlled by these narratives. But there's also a narrative where when you come in thinking that freedom means doing absolutely anything, anytime, whenever, however, always available, never saying no, that's also control. And I was controlled by that thought that if I wasn't, because he was older than me, I always needed to be ready. I never needed to tell him no. And I need to be willing to do absolutely anything because I didn't want to be one of those Christian wives, the one that always had a headache and always like, no, don't touch me. Or like, I didn't want to be a ooch ouch girl. Like, I didn't want to do all of that. And I felt myself still playing a role. It was still a caricature. It really wasn't until towards the end of my marriage and post divorce where I was like, I really was in the any of that, right? And so sexual freedom is leaning into, as you said, what your kink is, accepting the fact that it is a kink, and doing things that still recognizing that there are freedoms that honor God still in the freedoms within your marriage, but there's no cookie cutter way, and your bedroom is not going to look like somebody else's bedroom, and flying off the chandelier isn't going to secure your marriage in that regard. And that was the negative thought that I came in with. That was the thought that controlled me and led to a lot of comparison because I wasn't soft and dainty and I wasn't meek and mild and the church mouth and all of that. But I recognized that my personality, like I can't be meek and mild and talk about dildos and deep throats from the pulpit. The Lord called me to do a work.
Yes.
And they needed the personality to go with it. And it was a lot of evolution. And we don't realize how much of the world we bring into our bedroom. And it's not because we like kink. That's not the world that we're bringing in. It's the supposed to be is what we bring in.
Yeah. And I often tell my clients there's no shoulds in your bedroom aside from it should be mutually pleasurable.
Yeah.
That's really look, if y'all want to fight me and get technical in the comments, I'm sure that we could come up with a couple of more, but should is not generally used in a healthy way when it comes to discussing Christian sexuality and trying to control what people should or shouldn't be doing with their spouses. The Bible is really clear that the marriage bed is undefiled and you have the freedom, but just because you have the freedom doesn't mean that you have the obligation to do all the things.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
I love the journey that the ADHD took us on, but we are supposed to be talking about flirting. So I'm going to try so I don't have to retitle the episode halfway through. Guys, the first part was flirting, but the second half is about kink. Who knew?
Right.
So we touched on it a little bit. You said that your clients often find it easier to text their spouses flirty messages or things like that. Sexting is a really hot topic when you pop in to a mommy group on Facebook. Why? I don't know. That topic is really heated for some people. So do you think it's okay for Christians to sext their spouses?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's okay. I think we're not allowed, we don't use shoulds, but I think that you should do it. I think it's another medium by which to communicate your desires. And I think that it is an approach it helps with accountability. in addition to confidence, it gives timing for people to be able to kind of sit with what was just said and craft a appropriate response that without the natural reaction that sometimes land as rejection, right? As much as men are lauded as these like super confident, beat on their chest, Neanderthal, insatiable, they're really just like goofballs just like us, honestly, at the end of the day. They talk a good game in certain areas, especially when it comes to like dirty talk and stuff like that, or flirty talk and erotic communication, because they're never really charged with having to do it. And when they do, it's like similar to what you say. I've seen it's like they're just trying to like push the envelope because they know that their wife is going to like recoil or blush or be embarrassed, and so that is their soft startup way approach as well. But what I find is that when men blush as well, men giggle, men will read, like if you send a text message to your husband and y'all at a family event and you send him a flirty text from across the room, you can just watch like just the little boy, not in them just come out, like the giddiness just come out because they have it sometimes a little bit of the uncertainty just like we do. And so text messages allows, so what by that I mean, if I as a woman who were like building up, I've been trying to say this all day, this is not really my personality, but I'm like, okay, I done worked with Angel, I done worked with Brittany. Now I'm getting ready to tell them where I want them to put it. I'm ready. Right. And then I go and say it, and it's a shock factor because he never heard me talk like that. And he like, huh? Or he does something just knee jerk that may land as rejection. And so now I'm like, see, I shouldn't have. This is why I don't ever say it. Now I'm walking away. But a text message allows him to have his reaction privately, that and then give a reaction back or give a response back where nobody has to feel like they did something wrong or like that it didn't land well.
That's one of the things that I see when we talk about sexual communication in my coaching sessions the most is it isn't so much someone feeling like, well, I don't know how to do this, so much
Mm-hmm.
as I fear their response.
Mm-hmm.
There's a fear of rejection. I had somebody message me on Instagram because I had posted a reel about one of my marriage products that are available on my website. I think it was the Marriage Playdate. It's a list of over 500 sexual activities. You I guess we're going to do a plug for that. It's a list of over
Mm-hmm.
500 sexual activities. You go through, you give everything a rating on a scale from I'm not really interested to I think this sounds delightful. We should do it all the time. Let's go do it right now. You come back together, you compare notes, you see where your ratings line up, and you have a whole new library of activities to enjoy together. And it's very non-threatening because you're doing that separately and just coming together to see where your ratings line up. And I had posted a reel about it, and this poor woman emails me and she's like, I really think that we would benefit from this, but I don't know how to talk to my husband about it. And I'm like, you baby girl, you just send him the reel. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what I was so lost in that moment because I was like, do you not communicate via reels like every other couple in
Mm-hmm.
2025? I'm confused. And she's like, no, we send each other reels all the time. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
Okay, help me understand. I'm so
Mm-hmm.
lost. And she's like, I'm just afraid of what he's going to think. And I'm
As
like,
response, yeah. Yeah.
is he going to leave you because you sent him a reel about a sex tool? Is there a bigger issue in your marriage that I'm missing context for? What's happening
Yeah.
here?
They,
And it's just like, no, no, he's not going to leave me. Okay, then if it's a good marriage and he's not going to leave you because you sent him a reel, send him the reel. And she's like, oh, you're
yeah.
right. And I'm like, I know I'm right. I know I'm right.
Mm-hmm.
And if
Mm-hmm.
you are that, like, we're dealing with that level of anxiety over our spouse's reaction, friends, your husband loves you and wants to have sex with you a
Yeah.
lot. Like,
Yeah.
he's going to be open to your advances. He's going to be he wants this sort of communication from you. So I think that you really I think my point in all of this is you really need to sit with, why are you afraid that he's going to reject what
Yeah.
you are saying or doing? And is that based in the reality of your marriage? Because if he
Yeah.
is going to reject or mock your advances, your problem is not flirting.
Yeah. Yeah. And what I find and have found is that they're less scared about his reaction to the real and more scared of what that would say about them as a woman. And they are more afraid of losing the reputation that they've worked so hard to uphold as this good, godly woman, this good girl,
That's really
than
good.
they are their husband's reaction and the rejection that they may feel is towards this persona and not them individually. So they're walking around in this like fragile bubble that any wrong move could threaten the integrity of all that they've built internally. But as you just said, is that really built in reality? Does your husband see you how you have endeavored for him to see you? And what I find is that when some women present with this caricature of a wife and their husbands are desperate for their actual wife that they're married to, and his requests land flat because it doesn't land on the ear of his wife. It lands on the ear of her representative.
That is so good. And so this all goes back to one of the very first things that you said is you need to sit with that feeling and figure out why what what has the cultivation of this persona done for you? How has it served you? What is you continuing to perpetuate this caricature? How
Mhm.
is it serving you and your marriage? And
Yep.
what is it doing for you? Um,
Yep.
that was so good. Okay, we're coming up. This took a lot of turns. All right. I want to know, so we're talking about, like sexting and awkwardness
Mhm.
and potential rejection and everything. And I know that because this is what you are like really good at. I think the very first time that I found you on TikTok, you were actually talking about the clitoris and you had your little model. And I was like, she is so cool. I want to be her friend. And, but then when you started posting more and I started catching more of your stuff, I was like, oh my God, she's so good at talking about communication and flirting and these things that I just my version guys, we've been married over 20 years. Like at this point,
Wow.
like sometimes our version of initiating is so like, are you going to try and stay awake when you're putting the kid to bed so that we could go to our bed later, or like you just going to fall asleep? Like what's the plan? And that's like
Mhm.
and that, because
Mhm.
after 20 years some of that stuff just kind of falls away and then you just lay it out there like, I want to have sex, are you going to stay awake for it or not? And
Yeah.
that's okay too. Like
Yeah.
the flirting is still valuable and fun and reminds us of who we used to be when we were young and could stay awake past 9 o'clock.
Right. Right. Right.
But it's
That's
also like
another
it,
supposed to be though,
yeah,
right? Like the
yes,
sex initiation and one of the top complaints between couples is who initiates more. Like that's what they argue about
that's
all the time.
always
And
such a big thing.
yes. And it is because we have another supposed to be of what initiation is supposed to look like.
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly my point. It's
Mhm.
okay if sometimes your initiation is a sexy Jessica Rabbit thing. And it's okay if
Mhm.
sometimes your initiation is he gets really turned on when I put on my grandma moo, so I'm going to put that on and just go do the dishes. And it's okay if
Yep.
sometimes your initiation is just, Do you want to have sex or you want to go to sleep? Those
Yep.
are all
Or you getting in
valid.
the shower? You getting in the shower tonight? And if the answer is yes, then that's a good chance that something's fitting to go down. And we know, and it's okay because, and the thing is that I think that what I would hope that people were able to take from this is that either one is fine. If
Yes.
you are intentional and you get joy out of creating an experience, do that. If there was a point in my marriage, my former marriage, where I would say he would be playing a video game and I would come downstairs, lean over the steps and say, on the scale of 1 to 10, how likely is this going down tonight? And based on, and he hated that. He hated that because he was more of an experienced guy. But listen, it's 11:30 and I need to know, am I going to throw on a couple more episodes of Modern Family? Or am I going to go ahead and go to bed? I needed to know. And so I think that it is okay for whichever way to work. And for those women who are like, I just can't bring myself to say, I need that tonight. They're like, oh my God, I can't do that. Then you can say, I'm going to get in the shower. Join me. Or I'm going to get in the shower. You think you'll be upstairs by the time I'm done? Like anything like that, it doesn't have to always be dripping with this salaciousness. And you can work your way up to it, right? That's why when I do with the erotic communication class, there were 3 levels of I created like this formula, if you will, for crafting sex or statements, whether you want to do it through text message or verbally. But there were 3 levels for like the mild, meek, and mild. You're just a little flirty. Like you talking more about, that massage was, thank you so much for that massage. I love when you blush. I'm wondering there was a way. I love to see you blush. I'm thinking about all the ways I might be able to make you blush later on. Very, very easy. And the blush could be like telling you you're handsome. Blush could also be a striptease. Blush could be, I'm sitting on your lap while I feed you pie. Blush could also be, I'm covered in the pie. Whatever you into, whatever
Yeah,
your
get
thing
it.
is. But
Get it.
right, it doesn't always have to be, because I also found I had a couple who initiation was their issue, but the husband was very particular. His chief complaint, besides her not initiating, was she did not speak sexually. She never turned him down. She was very compliant. She was a lot of times in her head. She's very analytical. But she didn't speak sexually. And again, pushing back against that persona, when she heard he wanted her to speak sexually, he said those words. What she heard was, I want you to talk like the girls on Instagram. That's not what he said, but that's what she heard. And it began a comparison. This is how I am. You knew how I was. I don't do that. And he's not asking you to be something that you're not. You can be 100% yourself and still consider your husband in his request, but also consider yourself, because I'm also not telling you to ask him for anything that you're not really into. And so we went down the list of all the things that she loves about their sex life, and oral sex was one of her favorite things. Like he was the chief cornerstone. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that about a regular man, but he was the chief when it came to oral sex. And I'm like, well, how many times do you ask for it? And she was like, I never do, but I'm grateful when he does it. I said, well, let's start there. That's where we're going to start.
Yeah.
That's where we're going to start, because there's no pressure. Because the other piece was she didn't want to say things that then would build pressure for her to perform. And then if she happened to change her mind, then he would be disappointed. And I'm like, well, if we start with oral sex, there's nothing for you to perform. Just lay down, open wide, and enjoy. And I'm telling you, telling him that you're ready to get slurped up like the bottom of a milkshake, I promise you, he is going to be, and he's going to take over the rest of the way. That's the problem. Like, what I'm realizing is that a lot of people, men and women alike, what we want and what we want to happen are 2 different things, right? And
so
we
deep.
would, we would like, he wanted his wife to speak more sexy, like use more sexy language, be a little bit more like unbuttoned a little bit. She was a little bit too buttoned up, and but what he wanted to happen was confirmation that she actually wanted what he wanted to do to her. So he
Mhm.
didn't need her to say, "Come bend me over, stick it here, and slap me in my face with it." That's because he didn't marry that. He knows he didn't marry that. But her asking for the oral sex, or telling how much she enjoyed the oral sex, or counting down the days when she's on a business trip, and 3 days until I get to feel your lips over me again. That's what he wants. He just wants confirmation, or what he wanted to happen is to her to give him confirmation that she wants the sex just as much as he does. And he's not this, Neanderthal that just can't get enough, that he's in there in the bedroom with a partner that actually enjoys the sex that he enjoys having. That's what he wanted to happen. And she didn't need to become somebody else to do it. The other thing that helped with her leaning into who she was a planner. She was a huge planner. Everything like spontaneity and all of that never worked for her. And I'm like, I am pro plan sex. So that's perfect. And what a text message gets to do is you send it in the morning, you know everything that you need to do to make that happen, lead it up to it. When the roles are reversed, when he busts out with something like, "Hey, can we do?" Then she feels like, "I'm on the spot. I didn't think about that. I didn't shave yesterday. Oh, I need to shower." All those things. But if you initiate, if you set the tone, then you already know what needs to happen leading up, so that you're in the best headspace for that, even if there's something that you need him to do. So if you start with that, I'm 3 days until I get to feel your lips on me again, then you also can say, all right, on day 2, I need you to make sure that the sheets are changed. Day 1, there's going to be an Amazon package that arrives with our new curtains. And how much better would I look in the light if those new curtains up? You know what I'm saying? And not in a manipulative kind of way, but you're vocalizing what you need to feel your sexiest. And when I tell you he did it with pride and with pleasure, and was excited about it. And it took some time, because there was a couple of times like, "Did you send a text message yet? Did you send a text message yet? Did you send a text message?" And it was like, "No." And I said, "Okay, take your phone out. And now we're going to do it right now, because I don't trust you to do it when session is over. Take out your phone and do it right now." And then she was like, "Oh my God, he's responding already." Yeah. And we're getting ready to have a conversation right now. And now I started ghostwriting sex for her. But then I felt like, let me create, and which led me to create that formula, because it's easier I had a pastor that used to teach function before the feeling. And I don't all the way agree with that. But in this case, until it becomes second nature, having a way to kind of work at, just like dance moves, you don't know it until you learn it. Slowly but surely, now you're just going through the motion, do. And then eventually, once you got it in this second nature, now you're giving it a little bit different. But a couple weeks ago, it was just 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. But now you're really giving it all that you have. I feel like erotic communication is, especially for people who are a little bit more conservative, is the same way. You do it until it becomes second nature. And then you forget Brittany and her little formula. I got this.
All right. So if someone is wanting to find information for this blueprint,
Mm-hmm.
what is it? Where do they find it?
The blueprint you can find, actually, I just released last Tuesday, and I'm not sure when this will come out, but I can give you the link so you can put it in the show notes.
Yes.
I did an episode for Christian husbands called "Help, We Don't Have Enough Sex." That's what it's called. We went through the 3 levels: the flirty, the suggestive, and the erotic. Those are the 3 levels. And that way, if you're watching that, it's me speaking from a husband's vantage point, but it'd be very easy for you to change the verbs and the nouns to switch it to more, receptive, or whichever one fits how y'all get down in your house. So that would be, it's free. That's the free version, free and readily available for all the people on the internet.
What other products or things do you have to help people with their communication and sex in their marriage?
A similar, and this is a similar survey or assessment, I guess, that for your marriage PLAYdate. It's called the Sexual Possibilities Inventory. But the difference between yours and mine is that it kind of works at or I don't know if it's different, but you assess the same way, whether this is something that you're into or absolutely not. But then there's also a values column. Like, do you think that this is something that God's okay with? And the conversation then is, if you think God's okay with this, and you're into it, and then your husband thinks God's okay with this and he's into it, now we know, let's put this on the list. But if it's a situation where I'm into this, but I'm not too sure if God's okay with this, or he doesn't think that God cares, but he's not into this, now we know where we need to have a conversation, because it's a possibility inventory, but also kind of like leveling the playing ground on where we differ in our sexual expectations. And a lot of times when we bring the Bible into our bedrooms unnecessarily, we need to figure out, it helps to pinpoint whether there's a scriptural issue, whether there is just a personal preference or personal conviction issue, whether it's a trauma related situation, whatever it is, it gives you an opportunity to assess your values as well as your interests over the particular, and it's about 2 pages of different sex acts.
I love that. I want to throw in, since we were talking, this weird, I should have expected it, but look, the ADHD did not anticipate.
Mm.
Uh, so if you are wanting more of a guided approach to communication around sex in your marriage, I have a sex journal that has over 100 prompts, and it just goes through, you pick a prompt, you write out your response, you, in the same way we talked about sending a text message and not having to be there for their reaction, you let
Mhm.
you let them read it, and then they get to respond, and they get to control their
Absolutely.
response, like, "Oh my gosh, I had no idea that you were into that." And they get, like, you guys get the opportunity to get curious, because I think one of
Yeah, I
the
love that.
biggest things that we didn't hit on in this episode is responding with curiosity,
Yep.
and leading with curiosity when we're having erotic communication issues. Oh my gosh, I thank you for telling me that you are interested in that activity. I had no idea. What about it is so appealing to you?
Yep.
What are you hoping to feel if we were to engage in that activity, right? And 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 that is such an important tool. So that journal will be in the show notes. That's intimate communications, and I will link all of Brittany's products and things. And Brittany offers coaching for you if you feel like she could really help you delve into the realm of erotic communication in your marriage. And as always, friends, go have good sex.